paradrama tales.
$300 a month. That's what she spends on furniture. Not for our home, not for anything real, but inside a mobile game. And yet, every time I bring up a budget, I'm the bad guy, the one ruining the vibe. I didn't think it had ever come to this. We met in the most unexpected way through a shared love of a mobile game called Sims Freeplay. It sounds silly, maybe even trivial, but it was real for us. My wife and I were introduced by my cousin who noticed we both spent hours building virtual lives, creating stories pixel by pixel. That game wasn't just entertainment. It was a bridge that connected two people from different walks of life, sparking a friendship that quickly blossomed into love. Back then, she was 20, fresh out of university, and full of dreams about the future. She told me she didn't want to rush into a career because she hoped to become a housewife after we got married. She believed jobs in her field were scarce and low-paying, and honestly, I was okay with that. I was already making enough money to support us both, and she had no debt, only a small amount of student loans. We were young, hopeful, and thought we had a plan that worked for us. The truth is, I admired her passion and her commitment to building a home together. We talked about finances openly at first, how I would manage the money since she wasn't comfortable with numbers, and how she'd have her own spending money each month. It felt fair, balanced, and supportive. I wanted her to feel free to enjoy life without stress, and she trusted me to handle the financial side of things. We built dreams together, much like our Sims creations, carefully, deliberately, with hopes for a happy life. But sometimes the foundations beneath those dreams shift quietly without warning. Looking back now, I realize how much I underestimated the power of those little pixels on her screen and the emotional space they occupied. At the time, I thought the game was just a harmless pastime, something we both enjoyed once upon a time. What I didn't see was how it was about to become a secret world she invested in emotionally and financially, in ways that would change everything between us. That's where our story begins. Not with love lost, but with trust quietly unraveling one virtual dollar at a time. From the very beginning of our marriage, I took on the role of managing our finances. It seemed natural she wasn't comfortable with numbers, and I was making good money. I handled the bills, the budgets, the bank accounts, and the investments. I thought that by taking control of the money, I was helping build a secure future for us both. We agreed on a system I would transfer $500 each month into her private spending account. That was her fun money, the budget she could spend however she liked, no questions asked. The rest of my paycheck went into our joint account, which covered rent, utilities, groceries, and other shared expenses. I also maintained my own private account for personal expenses, plus savings and retirement funds. For a while, it worked. She was happy with her $500, and I trusted her to manage it responsibly. After all, she was the one who disliked budgeting and avoided talking about money. She said numbers stressed her out, and I believed that keeping the finances compartmentalized would help avoid fights and keep our marriage peaceful. But over time, I began to notice small things that didn't add up. She would ask for more money before the month was over, or I'd see charges on our joint account that didn't align with our agreed-upon spending. When I asked, she was vague, or she dismissed my concerns, saying I was infantilizing her by questioning how she managed her fun money. Still, I let it slide. I trusted her. I told myself that everyone needs an outlet, a little indulgence, especially if she was a stay-at-home wife. I thought the $500 was enough, and that any extra would be rare. But then I started to notice a pattern money disappearing quietly from places it shouldn't, like our joint account, where she wasn't supposed to be spending personal funds. And I wasn't even able to check the statements regularly because she had my passwords changed, or our accounts were set up, so I couldn't see all transactions easily. I was handing over the keys to our financial house, trusting her to respect boundaries we'd set together. But behind the scenes, something was happening, a secret spending spree that would shatter the trust I'd built. Looking back, handing over those keys without ongoing transparency was a mistake. But at the time, I thought I was being supportive, respectful of her wishes and comfort. Little did I know, I was stepping into a house with hidden rooms I'd never been allowed to enter. Then came the month I couldn't ignore, the month when $400 disappeared from her fun money account in just a few weeks. It was all for the Sims Freeplay, the very game that had brought us together years ago. At first I thought maybe she'd splurged on something special, a treat or a gift for herself. But when I looked closer at the transactions, I saw it dozens of microtransactions for Sims, currency special furniture packs, exclusive outfits for her virtual characters, things I never understood the appeal of. I confronted her gently at first, asking where the money had gone. She told me it was for the game, and that it was her escape and her hobby. When I suggested that $400 was a lot to spend on a mobile game, she bristled. She accused me of infantilizing her, saying I didn't trust her to manage her own money, and she pointed out my salary as if that somehow justified the spending. I tried to explain that it wasn't about the amount in isolation, it was about transparency and boundaries, that our agreement was $500 a month for fun money, not hundreds on virtual furniture that neither of us could touch or use in the real world. But the conversation quickly escalated. She said I was ruining the day that I was making a mountain out of a molehill. I realized then that money was becoming a bigger issue than I'd imagined. I had stopped playing Sims years ago, but watching her spend so much on it and on things I couldn't see or share made me feel shut out. I started questioning what else I didn't know. If she was spending $400 in a month, what was happening the other months? Was this a one-time indulgence or a habit? The uneasy feeling settled in my gut. The $400 wasn't just about the game, it was about trust, honesty, and respect. I wanted to believe she was just having fun, but the secrecy hurt. It felt like a barrier growing between us brick by brick, transaction by transaction. And I knew then that this was just the beginning of a much bigger problem, one that would test the foundation of our marriage and my patience in ways I never expected. What really shook me was when I discovered she wasn't just dipping into her private spending account anymore. She had started using money from our joint account, the account we both shared for bills, groceries, and things that mattered to both of us. That wasn't supposed to happen. That money wasn't hers alone to spend. It was ours. At first it was small amounts, $50 here, $75 there, but then it grew. Clothes she'd buy without telling me, birthday presents for friends that I hadn't budgeted for, and even more spending on the Sims game. When I saw these charges piling up, I felt blindsided. The money she was using wasn't just fun money anymore. It was coming out of our shared life. I tried to talk to her about it to remind her of the system we'd agreed on. But every time I brought it up, it felt like I was the bad guy. She'd say I was being controlling, that I didn't trust her, that I was treating her like a child. It was exhausting. I began to feel like I was arguing with a wall, someone who refused to acknowledge boundaries or accountability. That's when I started to understand something important. This wasn't just about the money, it was about respect. Using the joint account for personal expenses without discussing it felt like a betrayal. It was a breach of trust that said, I don't value your input or our agreement. Financial infidelity is a thing, and it hurts. It's like finding out your partner has been keeping secrets, but the secrets are dollars and cents. And for me, it was crushing because money wasn't just numbers on a screen. It was the promise of a shared future stability and fairness. The hardest part was feeling powerless. I was supposed to be equal partner, but decisions were being made without me. The lines between mine, yours, and ours blurred until I wasn't sure what our marriage even meant anymore. This wasn't just a fight about money anymore. It was a fight for honesty, for partnership, and for the respect every marriage deserves. And deep down, I knew it wasn't going to be easy to fix. ChatGPT said, what I didn't fully understand at the time was why she was spending so much. Why those hundreds of dollars disappeared each month on a game, on virtual items, on something so intangible. It wasn't just careless spending or a simple lack of respect. It was deeper, more complicated. There's a psychology behind compulsive spending, especially in today's digital world, where buying isn't just about owning things. It's about escaping feelings that are hard to face. Experts call it retail therapy when it's occasional, but for some, it becomes a real addiction, a way to soothe anxiety, loneliness, or stress, and mobile games are designed for that. They use dopamine loops to keep you hooked, rewarding small purchases with bursts of pleasure that temporarily mask emotional pain. She had her reasons even if she couldn't always explain them. The game wasn't just a distraction, it was a world she controlled, where she could build, create, and feel successful. In our real life, where she hated budgeting and felt limited, that digital space gave her freedom. Buying virtual furniture, special outfits, or extra coins wasn't just about the game. It was about feeling some sense of control, excitement, or escape. The science is clear. Compulsive spending activates the brain's reward system, releasing dopamine much like addictive substances do. It's not simply a matter of willpower. There's emotional chemistry at play, and the guilt or shame that comes after only fuels the cycle. For someone like her who avoided financial conversations and disliked accountability, the game became both refuge and trap. That doesn't excuse the secrecy or the breach of trust, but understanding the psychology helped me shift from anger to empathy. It made me realize that this wasn't just about money, it was about pain coping and unmet needs. Yet empathy didn't mean tolerating disrespect. It meant recognizing the complexity behind the problem, and knowing that healing would require honesty communication and setting clear boundaries. Sometimes the hardest battles aren't just about dollars and cents. They're about navigating the invisible wounds that drive us to spend to escape. And facing those wounds is the first step to finding real peace for both of us. Money is more than just numbers on a screen. It's a symbol of trust, respect, and partnership. When the money we share gets spent without discussion, it's not just a financial issue, it's a breach of respect. And that's what hurt me the most. In our marriage, money was supposed to mean teamwork. I managed the bills, she had her spending account, and together we built a life. But when I saw money disappearing in secret, it felt like a quiet betrayal. It was as if my opinions, my needs, and my role were being erased without a word. Respect is about honoring agreements, but it's also about valuing each other's presence in decisions, especially those that affect both of us. When she used the joint account for personal things, without telling me, it felt like she was saying, "Your voice doesn't matter here." And that's painful. I noticed that the more she spent without transparency, the more distant she became. The money wasn't just disappearing, it was creating walls between us. It shifted the dynamic from partners building a future to strangers managing parallel lives. I was left wondering, if money can be spent in secret, what else was hidden? What else was slipping away? It's hard when financial respect gets lost, because it impacts everything: trust, communication, even love. Arguments over money aren't just about dollars, they're about fairness and feeling seen. I found myself questioning not just her choices, but our entire relationship. Was I being taken for granted? Was I really being respected as an equal? Those questions haunted me, because I believed that respect was the foundation of a strong marriage. At the same time, I knew this wasn't just her problem or mine, it was our problem. Money reflects the health of a relationship, and if respect fades in the way we handle it, everything else suffers. That's why for me, the fight wasn't about stopping her from spending it, it was about rebuilding respect. Because without that, even the biggest paycheck can't buy back what's lost. When I finally gathered the courage to confront her about the spending, I thought it would lead to understanding, a chance to reset our expectations and rebuild trust. Instead, I was met with resistance so strong, it felt like hitting a brick wall. I remember sitting down with her, holding the credit card statements in my hands and asking calmly, at first, "Can we talk about these charges? Where did the money go?" I expected honesty. I hoped for openness. But what I got was defensiveness and denial. She told me I was overreacting, that I was making a big deal out of nothing. She said she didn't want to be controlled and accused me of infantilizing her. Every attempt I made to discuss the financial boundaries we'd agreed upon was turned back on me with accusations that I was the one creating conflict, that I was being petty and mistrustful. It hurt. It hurt deeply, because I wasn't just questioning money, I was questioning the foundation of our relationship. Yet she refused to see it that way. She was so wrapped up in her defense mechanisms that she couldn't or wouldn't acknowledge how her actions affected me. I tried to explain why transparency was important, that money wasn't just currency, but trust and respect. But every word seemed to bounce off an invisible barrier. The conversation devolved into her shutting down, refusing to talk further, or worse, turning the blame on me. That wall of denial wasn't just about finances. It was about admitting vulnerability and mistakes. And for her, that was terrifying. I realized then that I was facing not just a spending problem, but a deeper emotional disconnect. The woman I married, the one who shared dreams and hopes, was slipping away behind layers of denial and fear. It became clear that the money was never really the issue. It was the silence, the secrets, and the refusal to face the truth together. And that was a far harder problem to fix. In that moment, I understood that this confrontation wasn't the end of the road. It was just the beginning of a much longer journey, one that would test everything we thought we knew about love, trust, and partnership. Behind the closed doors of our home, while I was handling bills and working long hours, she was living a secret life, one that existed not in the physical world, but online. It was a world where she held the power, made decisions, and spent money freely away from my watchful eyes. She was a housewife in name, but in practice she was leading a double life, investing hundreds every month into a digital playground that neither of us could touch or truly share. I started to wonder what drove her to escape into that pixelated universe. Was it boredom, loneliness? A craving for control in a life where she felt sidelined? I didn't have all the answers, but what I did know was that this secret world was eroding the trust between us. For someone who disliked budgets and money talks, she became an expert at hiding transactions and diverting funds. The game wasn't just a hobby, it was a refuge. In that digital space, she could build, create, and feel a sense of accomplishment that seemed absent from our day-to-day life. She could be whoever she wanted and spend as she pleased without question. But the more I uncovered, the more it felt like I was watching a stranger. The woman I married, the one who once shared my dreams, was slipping away behind screens and secret purchases. It was as if our marriage was fractured into two worlds, one real grounded in bills and responsibilities, the other virtual, full of endless spending and unchecked freedom. That divide made me question everything. How well did I really know her? Was this just an escape or a symptom of something deeper? Was she trying to fill a void, or was this a quiet rebellion against the limits she felt trapped by? What hurt the most was the silence the secrets kept, not just from me, but from herself. Because hiding a life isn't freedom, it's isolation. And that's when I realized that saving our marriage wouldn't just mean fixing budgets or cutting spending. It would mean breaking through walls of secrecy, facing uncomfortable truths, and finding ways back to each other, if that was even possible. Sometimes the biggest battles happen not with words or fights, but in the quiet spaces where secrets grow. And that was the hardest place we had to face. Love isn't just about feelings, it's about respect. And respect means honesty, transparency, and yes, even budgets. I learned the hard way that you can love someone deeply and still need clear boundaries when it comes to money. Because without those boundaries, love can blind you to the cracks growing beneath the surface. Our marriage taught me that money isn't just dollars and cents, it's trust, it's partnership, and it's a language we both need to speak fluently. Ignoring the financial realities or brushing aside concerns doesn't make a relationship stronger. It weakens it, leaving room for resentment, secrets, and distance. If you love someone, you owe it to yourself and them to have those tough conversations. To be clear about expectations, to hold each other accountable, and to respect each other's needs even when it's uncomfortable. Because love without respect is fragile, and respect without communication is impossible. So, if you're watching this and wondering how to protect your heart and your future, remember this setting. A budget isn't about control, it's about care. It's about building a foundation where both of you can thrive honestly and equally. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever struggled with money and trust in your relationship, you're not alone. Hit subscribe and join us as we explore real stories of love, struggle, and growth. Because sometimes the most important investment isn't in cards or currency. It's in the courage to face the truth together.